Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is the Tiebreakers. I'm your host, Brooke, and
I'm your co-host, Dalan.
today we're gonna talk about story versus gameplay.
Yeah.
That
So
is our topic of the day.
narrative versus strategy,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
story
them.
versus gameplay.
For me, I'm on the narrative side. I love a good story in games. I would not play a game if it doesn't have a story. Has to have the story for
That's
me.
the story.
Yeah.
I'm on the opposite side. I feel like the story in a game will write itself, but it writes itself through the gameplay. That's my point of view. So a game like Terraria or Minecraft, where you can, write your own story as you go and as you play, rather than a pre-existing story you have to follow. I think that's kind of my stance.
Fair enough. I think, of course, one of my favourite games of all time is What Remains of Edith Finch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of these games where you have to follow the story. The story is like a game about a whole family and how they died, which is kind of interesting to me. And the story goes along and it goes through like death and grief, and it deals with real life experiences, I'd say, and like it's kind of encrypted as well. The way the narrative goes along is quite interesting, in my opinion. They mix different kinds of mediums too, which is also pretty cool to me.
I think that's quite unique. There's not a lot of games that kind of mix different mediums, but I feel like that's kind of something that you'd see in a gameplay perspective. I feel like I'd argue changing genres halfway through would be quite a good quite an interesting concept, to be honest.
fair, it's all quite gothic horror. However, they change the mediums in a way that's like one bit can be about comics, another bit can be about playing a cat.
Yeah.
And I think that's very cool when it comes to narrative, and especially the influence of like movie it seemed to have had, because like the actual graphics of the game, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
I think I've seen a clip of it. It reminds me a lot of Outer Wilds. And I feel like I don't think I'd be able to sit through something like Edith Finch like I could Outer Wilds, for example, because Outer Wilds has its pre-existing story, but you are uncovering it as an archaeologist.
Oh.
In Edith Finch, you are playing as the characters, and I find sometimes I don't find that as, weirdly, I don't find it as immersive being the characters than I would writing my own story as the character.
That's
not
fair
literally writing, but I feel like it's easier for me to get engrossed in the plot of something when it's happening naturally.
Yeah, okay,
I feel
that's fair enough.
Like I said, like Minecraft, I feel like they playing that tends to like give you this, you're the main character and
It's
there's
your
no
story.
It's your story,
Yeah,
rather than the story of someone else. I feel like that's why I'm not a big fan of narrative games, and that's why I'm not really the biggest fan of things like Telltale.
I think sometimes with them games, people find connections with characters a lot of the time. And I think even though it's not you, it's this connection you gain from this character is what really like connects you to the game, I'd say.
I will say that the idea of like connecting with a character and finding a character relatable doesn't really exist in something like Minecraft. It doesn't really exist in
true.
like
You can choose your
Terraria.
avatar.
You could, but you're then finding yourself interesting rather than the story. So I feel like it kind of makes sense to I can see the appeal, but I'm not really a big fan of narrative games. No.
Why is that? What strategy games do you like then?
Big fan. Yomi Hustle. So Yomi Hustle, it's actually, I feel like you do kind of build a narrative. The whole concept is a chess-like strategy game in which you play out a fight scene, and then at the end it'll replay it as a kind of like quick, as if your actions were real time. And I feel like that kind of builds, one thing with fight scenes in fiction is like they always tell a story within the fight scene. I feel like Yomi Hustle kind of has that kind of thing. You're building a show almost.
That's cool.
But it's a battle as well of like rock. I guess it's rock paper scissors. I feel like games like that, where you write your own narrative in a unique way, Yummy Hustle, I feel like that's more engaging to me than something like Life is Strange or The Walking Dead.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Telltale. It's like I get to choose what my characters do wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And the reactions of my characters are entirely dependent on an actual other person who's then doing the same thing as me.
Yeah.
And I feel like we kind of build that story together rather than listen to someone else's writing or listening to someone else's writing.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think at the minute I'm actually playing a game called The Split Fiction. At the minute it's a co-op game. I'm playing it with my partner.
Yeah.
And that's got a very mixed thing, since it's half fantasy, half sci-fi. It's quite cool when it mixes them genres. And I find in that game they use like past experiences and like real life experiences to influence their like stories that they go through. I think that's quite interesting. Like there was one level about like a parking ticket, and I just think it's very funny because you can see these influences about people. Like I could get a parking ticket.
Yeah, exactly.
But then it shows this like creative way in showing that this is a big boss you gotta fight.
Exactly.
And I think it's quite cool how they've done that, since they've linked the story to common experiences for people.
Yeah.
And like it also just really helps you feel immersed more into the game than I think Minecraft can, because I think you just either get connected to the character or you feel for that character. And I think that it's the same with a movie. It's the same with media. It's that influential kind of like connection with the audience I find very interesting.
I think one thing that I think Split Fiction does right, from what I've seen, is it's a narrative you're following, but I feel like it's also a co-op, and I feel like a lot of story games and narrative games don't really have. They're always single player. You don't really have that other human connection that you can build. So I feel like Split Fiction kind of has that little thing to it, you know?
Yeah, it has that added it's experience with someone else.
You're following a story, but you're also building your own kind of narrative with that other person. Like how I said with Minecraft, it's like there's always there's always like different ideas you guys can have together in one little story, despite the fact that it's an actual written thing.
Yeah, no, it's understandable.
It's like different approaches, different reactions to things.
Yeah,
I feel like games like that kind of do it quite well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think some of them also have this nostalgic thing to them, like Five Nights at Freddy's, for example. That's a very nostalgic game for me. Yeah. I loved the story for that. I was very obsessed. But I think that brought a community together. I think that really brought a community together. I think it was a cryptic narrative. It didn't have a straight narrative.
It kind of felt like an ARG almost.
Yeah, but it had that community element that made the story.
Exactly.
It just made the story. It had that influence. It had that YouTube presence that just made it big.
Yeah, I think with FNAF, FNAF does two things right. It gets the gameplay right.
Yeah.
You know, the whole gameplay loop. Check the cameras, check the doors, close the doors, open the doors. Or at least that's the first one. And they always have this unique gameplay for each game. So that's where I feel like I quite enjoy that. But then there's also the whole narrative thing where it's not necessarily building a story with someone else at the time, but it's kind of arguing with other people about which things are true.
Yeah, which one's right.
Which one's right.
I've had a long argument with someone about that.
Yeah. Is Dorko right? Is MatPat right?
That's true.
That one guy I watched like a 7-hour video of right.
It's this community it creates, and I think narrative does that a lot.
Yeah.
I think it does it a lot compared to gameplay can sometimes, like strategy-wise. I think
both with FNAF kind of go hand in hand. There's always like a balance between the two.
There is that balance there. Yeah.
At the end of the day, I feel like people who enjoy narrative and people who enjoy strategy, there are games that crossover, then there are games that are entirely separate. I feel like something like Dispatch, for example, I feel like I wouldn't get invested in that game at all if it's all story based. However, I don't think you would then be interested in something like Jujutsu Shenanigans on Roblox. There's no story there. It's just people beating each other up. Where we cross over depends on the game, really. Some games are more narrative than gameplay, like Split Fiction. And then some games are more gameplay than narrative, like Minecraft. But you can always find a balance in between.
I think you can.
I think that's quite cool.
Thank you for listening.
Hope you come back again.
Come back.